other day, I was beginning to write something about being on the path and reflecting over the times and the years that I've been on it, many, many years, as I know you have.
Many, right.
Yeah, both I think since we were, teenagers?
Depends on where you want to count the start, even early childhood.
Yeah, yeah.
Some of the experiences.
Early childhood, wow.
Yeah, well, middle childhood, 8, 9.
And I was thinking about, as I was getting ready to write this, how do I organize it in my mind? What are some of the reflections I have? What are some of the things that I've learned that has sustained me? And I thought, wow, this is a great conversation to talk to Lynn about and get some of her input. And I'd just like to run some of them past you and see what you think.
Well, you've got me curious.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's kind of divided it into like 4 different areas. And the first one that has sustained me over the years has been a really strong connection to the divine that has definitely changed over the years since I was a teenager and evolved on. But it's been there in all cases, and it's been strong and it's been deeper. But my whole definition of the divine has changed. How's that feel to you?
I would say that that's been very much my experience, but I've also had those intervals that I would call that sense of when God's not there, because for me, and I've talked to a lot of people who've been through this, there are those times when an old concept of God is no longer adequate for your understanding as we continue to grow on this path. And sometimes there's a little bit of a gap between when the old concept of God fades away and the new, more expansive understanding comes into our view, our understanding, and most of all, our sense of the presence of that God. So on one level, I'm always aware and have never lost that awareness that God is there, and yet sometimes as I'm in that transition point, I don't feel it.
It's scary?
Oh, you know, I've said that it can feel like being orphaned at times, especially when you began as a child, and God is very much that comfortable, cozy father figure.
That you learn in religion and
exactly,
in church. Yeah.
Exactly. And there are many stages of, I've often talked about letting go of the Santa Claus God, where they're pretty much the same thing in a child's mind. And each time our understanding of God grows, there's a letting go of the God that we used to hang on to. And that can be scary.
Yeah, very scary. I know what you mean. As you're trying to figure out what's the new one.
Exactly.
And is it there? And how is this going to change my identity?
Right.
And what am I going to hold on to?
And that whole business of how to retain any sense of God having a personal quality.
Absolutely.
When we get rid of the old man on the throne in the sky, who is a very personal God, and we start looking at this universe, we start looking at the subatomic level and that the idea of consciousness penetrating everything, God can become very mechanistic if we're not careful and if we lose that heart connection.
Yeah, it is. And I think that it kind of goes along with the second category that I've come up with. And I call this attributes. I don't know what else to call it when I was thinking about writing this, but attributes of the soul that have been nurtured along this path, this journey, that has really helped to keep me centered and feel connected to this God that has changed in my mind. And things like love, whatever we call love, trust, non-judgmentalism, self-acceptance, patience, a lot of different attributes that just come with being able to hang on and grow and evolve as a soul.
And you know, I think that trust one is really big because often there is almost a decision we make. Is the universe friendly or unfriendly? Are we known or not known? Is our process leading us someplace good or not? And trust comes into play as we grapple with those things in our lives.
And love, too.
And love, too.
Because you learn how to love in a different way.
Right. and that view of ourselves. How are we going to allow ourselves to grow more in our ability to look at ourselves and handle what we see without becoming overly self-critical, which is very crippling for many people.
Very much so. So the whole concept of non-judgmentalism
Yes.
and acceptance, those soul attributes are really critical as you move forward, and I have found that in myself, because the other space that I have talked about or felt about has been what I'm terming competencies, because it's something that I think we as personalities and as souls can learn to do, as opposed to something that evolves as an attribute in our soul.
That's an interesting distinction. So you're saying that there are some things that as we continue to grow, we become them, but other things that we can choose to do in order to nurture that growth. Did I understand what you meant by the difference between those two?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I'm glad you brought up that difference, because in the one sense, the things that we grow, we evolve into and we expand into those attributes of love, and they change. But I think what nurtures those along to expand and to be more acceptable to us, or available to us would be the word that I want to use, is these competencies that we can grow in. So let me talk a little bit about that and see what you think about those. So these are competencies that are like focusing, gaining attention, noticing, self-awareness, observing, different perspectives, being able to witness your actions. Those are the kinds of things that I think you can learn to do.
I would agree, and I guess I would say not only that we can learn to do, but learn to do, bringing in that other thing you talked about, learn to do non-judgmentally.
Yes.
Because I see a lot of people who are constantly observing themselves in a highly self-critical way, and I know that's not what you're talking about, but that will tend to be something that puts the brakes on, interferes with people being in the flow of the moment, constantly monitoring themselves. But there is that other skill, I could even call it, of being able to step back and look at what you're doing in an attitude of almost, I guess I would call it compassionate curiosity. What's she doing now? Or, oh, look at how she's getting upset. And almost taking the third person with respect to ourselves.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And it gives you a sense of detachment from it. It also helps you to identify, I think, more with this higher self that we call ourselves, this greater part of ourselves, so that we aren't so caught in reactive patterns.
Yes.
And that's the point of what I was trying to say, that there are competencies we can train ourselves into, but it is all to the basis of learning how to become more detached from what we term as our ego and our reactive patterns.
Right. And
in a compassionate, loving way.
One of the things that I've found really fun to do is a practice that I call stalking the wild ego. See how many times you can catch ego doing what ego does. And it's usually a self-protective approach, hanging on to an understanding, an identity of ourselves that is we're really trying to grow beyond, but ego thinks, oh, if I let go of that, I won't be me anymore.
Reminds me of a little story of when I was young, maybe in my late 20s. I was extremely self-critical of myself, and I was going through an extremely difficult time in my life with my first husband dying. And one of my friends said to me, and it stayed with me all these years, why are you so hard on yourself?
Oh, wow.
And
an interesting time for someone to say that.
Yes, yes. And what it brought out was one of those attributes that as you're growing, you evolve into. It was tremendous self-compassion.
Wow.
You know, I am going through a lot, and I began to watch myself walk through that, but in a compassionate way, in a loving way, in an accepting way. So when I would bite at somebody or be more antagonistic, I didn't do it in such a way that I was judging and being critical of myself.
You know, and as you talked about that, Eileen, one of the things that occurred to me is that often when people are almost afraid to look too deeply inside, it's because they assume they won't like what they see.
Yeah.
So they prefer to skate on the surface. And what we find as we, with that compassion and with the sense of a spiritual growth purpose, look inside like that, it's not really so scary.
Yeah.
We find that there is just a smaller self in there that is truly wanting to grow and sometimes is a little bit confused about how best to do it.
And it also helps us to accept others too.
Oh, in a very big way. The more I find over the course of my life, the more I've been willing to look at myself, to examine my own unconscious motives and intentions, to look back on what was driving me in a given moment, much, much less likely to look at someone else in the middle of their reaction and be judgmental about it.
Yes.
Because I've been there.
Yes.
And I understand that feeling.
Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference.
It's like what Katharine Hepburn said on Golding Pond. She said in her script, we're all trying to do the best we can do at the time that we're doing it. And
Oh, isn't that the case?
yeah.
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 And that kind of pings on another idea too, that I think that all of us, whatever it is that we're working with in our lives, in our attempt to grow, working with a lot of different people from a lot of different perspectives and backgrounds over the years, spiritual and non-spiritual in their orientation, everyone wants to know that their life matters, that they're going to be okay, even if things are not as smooth as they might like them in the moment, and that their life has meaning and purpose.
Yes. I know that's been true for me.
It's core to the journey.
Yes. Journey. I'm glad you brought that up because that was the fourth space for me as I've tried to group these things that have sustained me over the years. And that was the recognition and the belief that this is a journey. It doesn't all happen overnight. It takes a long time. You know, I think it's taken us thousands of years and many, many lifetimes to find ourselves where we are today.
Yes.
And we're not going to get rid of the patterns or the sense of separateness that we have overnight.
Right.
It's going to take a long time to be able to do that.
I'm glad you said that because I would have to say that you just said is the single biggest learning for me from middle age on. As a young adult, I might as well have had a sign around my neck that said enlightenment or bust. I was determined that this was the life I was going to get there. Now I don't even know what there is. but that idea that we could be finished.
Yeah.
And as I've continued to grow and come up against my own rough edges and get bruised a few times and pick up and carry on, there's more of a sense that we are, as part of evolution, ongoing the same way this universe is ongoing.
Right.
And so it is about the journey. It's about the process. At the same time, it's good to be able to celebrate attainments along the way.
Absolutely.
Because we can fall prey to the ever-moving finish line. And I see this a lot with people who never feel as though they've accomplished anything in their growth, but it's because they keep moving their sights further and further ahead. So it's good sometimes to look back at the issues we dealt with earlier in life, the traits that we may have struggled with, and realize that, oh, those really aren't a part of me anymore. Because we can celebrate each increment in our growth while paradoxically we hold in mind that we're not going to be done. We're just going to continue up the spiral.
Or maybe not. You said, I'm done with learning that. I'd like to look at that in a different reframe, perhaps. It's that the magnetism that it held on me, the ability to respond in that way becomes less and less as I journey through life because I've become more aware of this pattern. I'm more connected to the divine. I can choose a different way.
Right.
I know why I reacted that way in the past, and I choose something else, but it's still there. that tendency.
It can be, yes.
Yeah, is I'm aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't choose to respond the way I used to. And it becomes easier and easier. You know, and I think about this journey being a time, a process. I love process, but it's a gift. Mm-hmm. It's a gift to be able to take the time to be able to grow in these competencies and grow in these attributes so that we can become closer to the divine and learn on the way.
And I think that's one of the main reasons that we love the idea that this journey is set up to go over the course of an entire year using various formats of connection. Mm-hmm. Not that a year is enough to be finished, so to speak, but a year is a nice piece of the road. And I'm excited about meeting the people who are going to walk that road with us.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's exciting to know that we'll have a group of people with us who will grow with us and evolve with us, and who will know where we all end up, including you and me.
Oh, exactly. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.